either as a Messianic Jewish man, kind of a token Jew when I visit churches, and I show up in my kippah and my tallit and my long beard. I'll flash a little picture of what I'm talking about, how I used to wear my beard really, really long when I was embracing Orthodox Judaism for a congregation that I was a member of or a part of, a partner with. And I would show up to churches looking like this, and some people would just look at me as like, wow, what's with this get up? What are you trying to be? Are you really Christian? The way you're looking doesn't quite fit the bill. And the others would be like, oh, wow, it's Moses in the flesh. You're a Christian and you're a Jew. You've got the best of both worlds. That's what I mean by doubly blessed. Or that's what Dr. Stern means by doubly blessed. And he goes on to elaborate. He says, in the latter case, we're actually put on display. Right. And I felt that too. I visited a church. It's true story. I visited a church, and it was my very first time visiting. And the pastor, upon seeing me, his eyes got really big, and he's like, wow, you're like the Apostle Paul walking and talking. You're a Jewish man who believes in Jesus. Can you sit on the pulpit sit on the platform with us? And I sat up in those seats that are usually behind the pulpit, but are usually reserved for the elders or somebody, or the co-pastors, or these, you've seen pulpits where there are chairs behind the pulpit, so you're facing the audience. First time visiting, and I got invited up to the pulpit, and I didn't want to turn him down. I was honored to be up there, but I couldn't help but leaving, thinking that, like David Stern described me, we were put on display. We were requested to give our quote-unquote testimony every other week, maybe at our local congregation, and any questions about the Old Testament are immediately referred to our, quote, our Jewish Christian, end quote. So David Stern talks about that in short, we become the church's token Jew. And it didn't happen so much at my local congregation, but like I said, when I would visit churches, and the pastor invited me up and said, can you do some Q&A with us? And I said, sure. And so I took the microphone and I said, what would you like to know? And the first thing they start asking is, Old Testament questions, Hebrew questions. Why do Jewish people do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And so understandably, people are curious, and they don't usually have Jewish people visiting. For some, this is the first Jew they ever met, So I wasn't too harsh on people. This really happened a lot down in the South when I was in the military, and lived down in Alabama and visited churches down there. I would just show up uninvited, unexpectedly, unknowingly. I would drive down the street, pick a church, and just park and get out and walk in, and I wouldn't sit in the back because I think that's too condescending myself. But I would slip into the service, not secretly, right? It wasn't like I was trying to spy on them. I was there to worship. But I would walk in like any other visitor and find a seat, usually somewhere in the middle, and just take it as it came. So Stern concludes by saying, in either case, our Jewishness, and this is conclusion to my study, our Jewishness becomes a cause celebre. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that French word, celebre. I think the E is silent on the end. It's similar to a celebrity, or right? We become a Jewish celebrity. And or more to the point here, it gets defined not by we Messianic Jews, but by the Gentiles around us. So we end up being, wow, look at this guy. He's a Jewish fill in the blank, and they're not quite sure what to do with this. So, but that'll do it. If I were to click on that link there, in fact, I will, since we're at the end here. You can see that I lifted that quote from the late Dr. Stern, Messianic Jewish Manifesto, Jewish New Testament Publications, 1988, page 13, and I'll show you the book again next week when we talk a little bit more about it. But essentially, as you can see by looking at my study, that's it. You see my signature down there at the bottom. That's the end of the study, Judaism v. Christianity. Well, next week we'll just do a little bit of kind of practical application. What would this look like today? To have a Messianic Judaism that's more viable than it really is today. Jews embracing Jesus, Gentiles embracing Torah, both of us coming together. What does this look like more like practically in churches? In case you're not familiar with it, we'll talk a bit about that next week. I'll probably pull some more quotes from Stern's Manifesto, as I've got it on my computer here. So we'll do some discussions like that. But I hope you can join us next week. If you join us via Skype, let me say this one last plug real quick. If you join us via Skype next week, I'm kind of inviting you now. If you join us via Skype next week, if you join us live, if there are enough of you that join in the live class, not counting the regulars, then I'll actually open up the mic and we might have even some live discussion, take some live questions, Q&A next week about this topic of Jews embracing Jesus, Christians embracing Torah, are Judaism and Christianity incompatible with one another?